When Melanie and Tyler Tapania of Parmo, Ohio, began to plan their wedding, they envisioned the kind of celebration that lots of couples have. A beautiful white dress for the bride, a tux for the groom, great music, lots of family and friends, and of course, delicious food. But then COVID hit, and the Tapinas needed to change their plans. With a big reception out of the question because of the virus, the couple decided on a much safer backyard wedding limited to immediate family. But the couple already paid for all the food. So immediately following the ceremony, with Tyler still dressed in his tux and Melanie in her beautiful white gown, they put on face masks, hairnets, and gloves and served their wedding reception food to more than 130 women and children at a local crisis mission. While dishing out heaping portions of their delicious reception fare, the bride said, "Seeing everyone happy is making us happy." Later on, she added, "It's all about spreading the love." Over the course of my career as a rabbi, I have married dozens of couples. Often in the moments leading up to the wedding, with so much tension and pressure in the air, an emergent crisis causes tears. A florist with the wrong flowers, an inebriated groomsman, or a rip in the white dress. Never before have I seen a couple take something so disappointing, like a canceled reception and thousands of dollars spent on food, and just turn it on its head in order to make something so amazing. During these Yamim Noraim, these high holidays, I offered suggestions for how we can feel and think in response to these profoundly difficult times. Today is, of course, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, a day dedicated solely to considering our actions. We cast everything aside to spend the day with a single consideration. What have I done, and what can I do better? Yom Kippur is a day spent contemplating what to do. With that in mind, let's use this time for us to consider what to do in response to it all. And I would like to offer the Tapinas, that incredible wedding couple, as an example. The idea of infusing radical good into a space that threatens to be overwhelmed by darkness, what the Tapinas modeled for us all, is actually the very first idea introduced in the Torah. When we open the Torah scroll, the very first words remind us that God created heaven and earth. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. How did creation unfold? First, the Torah teaches, God fills a vast space of voided vast darkness with light. In a sea of darkness, the foundation of the world would sink. And so, with the very first action ever, God fills the endless darkness with radiant light. It is the very first act of creation, and it has been the Jewish approach ever since. When darkness bursts through the cracks and seeps into our world, as Jews, we have a tried and true response. We add light. Early in our history, when the darkness of barbarism and greed threatened to overwhelm the world, we introduced the radical idea of the innate value of every human being. When the darkness of exploitation threatened to swallow the less fortunate, we introduced the radical light of tzedakah and communal responsibility. And not so very long ago, in this great nation, when hatred of other ethnicities threatened the goodness of this country, we helped light the way for civil rights. Throughout our history, when darkness threatened to seep back in and overwhelm the world, as Jews, we responded with radical infusions of light. Even at our darkest hour during the Holocaust, we met darkness with light. One of the earliest and largest concentration camps in Germany was Buchenwald. From its establishment in 1937, Buchenwald was a site of despair. But in June 1945, after the fall of the Nazis, Jewish survivors fought off all that darkness with an infusion of light. On the very ground filled with the blood and tears, the survivors of Buchenwald did what Jews do. They added light. With some rudimentary tools, a few supplies, and an indefatigable spirit, the survivors turned Buchenwald, the concentration camp, into Kibbutz Buchenwald. The very site where tens of thousands of lives had been uprooted and the only thing that grew was hatred, was transformed into a Jewish collective dedicated to rerouting people by teaching them how to farm, and most importantly, once again, sowing the seeds of hope. This kibbutz operated until 1948, when most of its residents made aliyah to Israel and started a kibbutz outside of Tel Aviv. That kibbutz, Netzer Sereni, is still functioning today. A few years back, historian Judith Titer-Baumel wrote a book about kibbutz Buchenwald. And about the survivors who founded it, she wrote, "These idealists appear to me as the ultimate example of perfection. It is an incredible story of light being added to a place of profound darkness. But the story of Kibbutz Buchenwald is not alone. Let me quickly tell you another one. As many of you know, Julius Streicher was an early follower of Hitler and a virulent anti-Semite. He founded Der Strömer, a sensationalist Nazi propaganda-filled newspaper used to spread hatred throughout the Reich. At the end of the war, Streicher was captured and ultimately forced to stand trial for his crimes at Nuremberg, where he was found guilty and to be hanged. Many of the other Nazi defendants attempted to minimize their role in the Nazi murder machine and to deflect blame for their heinous crimes. Not Julius Streicher. To his dying day, Streicher remained a devotee to Hitler's hatred. Only moments before his head was placed in a noose, he proudly proclaimed, "Hail Hitler." Julius Streicher, even as he stood at Nuremberg, filled the world with darkness. But while Streicher was standing trial, the darkness of his soul was being counteracted by the infusion of incredible light at Streicher's estate. At his home in Germany, Jewish survivors formed Kibbutz Nili, where Jews were nursed back to health and taught how to farm in preparation for Aliyah to Israel. Kibbutz Buchenwald, Kibbutz Nili. Two incredible stories of how the unexpected infusion of light can overcome even the most intense and foreboding darkness. Indeed, the founders of these kibbutzim serve as shining models for us today as we face our own dark times. And like God in the story of creation of the world, we too can counteract the deep darkness of the world with radical, unexpected infusions of light, the kind of light modeled by the Tapainas at their wedding. Usually Yom Kippur is a time when we confront the misdeeds of our past. Today we confront a darkness beyond our control. While we cannot control the virus or instantly bring about the kind of change we hope to see in the world, we are not powerless. As we face darkness, we can follow the example set so many times before us. We can choose to infuse light. Use the time at home to learn a new language or enroll in an online college program or write poetry. Never had a bar or bat mitzvah? Join our Zoom class. Use the time at home to call old lost friends. Adopt a cause and be a passionate advocate. Or use the time to volunteer to make calls for a political candidate. Get off the couch or invite someone to get off the couch and join you for a walk. Start eating healthy or decide to bake cakes for all your neighbors. Finally say sorry for something you did way back then. Adopt a dog from the pound or volunteer to walk your neighbor's dog. Start a garden, read Dostoevsky, or volunteer to teach children at a local school. You can do that online. Take those next steps to make a change in your career, or decide that now is finally the time to put family first. It will be different for us all, but we can all do it. It's the very first lesson of the Torah, the story of creation. When foreboding darkness looms, match it with a radical and intense light. At our lowest moment in history, the founders of Kibbutz Buchenwald and Kibbutz Nili proved that this is not a fanciful idea. It is a bright reality that any one of us can choose. So this Yom Kippur, as the darkness of COVID looms, let's determine to make this year different. This Yom Kippur, let there be light. And let us be the source of that light, taking big radical steps to counteract the severe darkness we are all experiencing. And then, with the help of this light, may we be blessed to see that despite it all, life is still good. Gamar Chatima Tova.